A special thank you to our webinar sponsor, Loom Apps. Loom Apps aligns the modern enterprise workforce through better communication, engagement, organization, and work. The company's leading internet and employee experience platform intelligently connects people, information, and applications to deepen business relationships and grow institutional knowledge and productivity. Available across devices and languages, Loom Apps is an open, multi-talented platform built for enterprise scale and flexibility. Loom Apps is counted on by over 4 million users spanned the world's top enterprises from Airbus to Zendesk. Ben Brooks, named one of HR Tech's top 100 HR tech influencers, founder and CEO of Pilot, and an award-winning virtual employee development program. Monthly HR executive magazine columnist Coach's Corner, private CEO and executive coaching practice for nearly a decade, served on the board of directors for RServe's SLDN, and helped repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Leadership and management roles at Lockheed Martin, Oliver Wyman, Marsh Inc., and Marsh & McLean Companies. Co-founded the LGBT Employee Resource Group at his management consulting firm, and has resided in Manhattan for 14 years, where he's ridden out the pandemic while growing Pilot. I would now like to introduce and pass it over to Ben. Ben, you have the floor.
Excellent, Catherine. Well, thank you, and welcome, everyone. I'm Ben Brooks, the founder and CEO. We're very excited to connect with you all today. I'm committed that this is the best webinar you've been to all summer. This is a great use of your hour. You walk away inspired, knowledgeable, connected with new people, got some great stats and actions you can take. And so we're really thrilled with Loom Apps being our partner as well. So let me get us to our slides today. So, today's all about personalizing the employee experience in the digital workplace. We think about the workplace as an office, a place to go, but in today's day and age, oftentimes showing up to work really means opening the lid of a laptop or logging on to a computer system. Now, a couple of you have already said hello in the chat. One of the things that's unique about webinars with Pilot is we keep the chat open. It's not just for private connections with the panelists, but it's for everyone, because part of digital and a digital experience is connecting together. So if we see that we've got Wendy and Robert and Natalie, Marcus, Julie, Sherry. Oh, Sherry, I know Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Linda, all of you have said hello. And, if you let us know in the chat where you're joining, it's part of that we've got hundreds of people on, from Canada to Detroit to Missouri, DC, et cetera. So let's see where everyone is joining from. This will be a part of actually engaging today. We'll be getting your ideas and sharing with one another, because while we have some research we put together and some best practices, everyone on this webinar is smart. Everyone on this webinar has something to add and to contribute. So this is about a community conversation. Look at the chat light up from the UK to India, Jamaica, wow, Minnesota, Northern Ohio. Excellent. Tracy put she's with First Trust Bank. Amazing. Well, let me just tell you briefly, we'll talk more about Pilot at the end, but just so you have a context for who I am, Catherine gave a lovely introduction. Pilot has an award-winning employee development program. Recently, stats said that 83% of people leaving in the Great Resignation are feeling they're not getting career development and they don't have growth opportunities at their current employer. We solved that with a virtual and digital product. Our company is remote first since our founding, won a bunch of awards, including from HRE, the Top Product of the Year award, and we'll tell you more about that. But the idea simply is, I'm a former senior vice president of HR. I know how hard it is to roll out programs and get employees to use them and have the data to prove them. We figured all that out with Pilot in one award-winning program. So today, Lydia's from upstate. We've got Puerto Rico, Coral Springs, Virginia, Lake Oswego, Oregon, Kansas. Hi, Bethany. Wonderful. So we're going to talk about three problems. When we think about the digital workplace and personalizing the employee experience, three big problems. Then we're going to talk about, we're not going to just leave you in a bad problem spot, but about what's possible in the future. And we'll have three solutions that are the other side of those problems, sort of the other side of the coin, from a problem to a solution. And then the exciting part is, number four, that's where you all come in. We're going to actually crowdsource. If you've never crowdsourced, it's a very cool process. We call it community source, because you all aren't a crowd, you're a community. We're all part of the HR and supplier diversity professions, digital professions. So we're going to have you all share your own tips about what's working, ideas, vendors, frameworks, best practices, articles, et cetera, and to be able to connect with each other on LinkedIn and expand our professional networks in a digital sense. It's almost like we went to a conference. We all flew into Chicago for a conference today, except for from the comfort of our home or our office right here on WebEx. And we'll talk about driving impact. We've got something to share with you after the fact. We have a leave behind of a roadmap that you can share with your colleagues about how to personalize the employee experience. Thanks everyone for, Terrence, another Jamaica in the house. This is amazing. And Fort Worth, excellent. But now, Kat, hi. I know Kat too. Wonderful. So we got a lot of great people here. So again, the WebEx chat, we want you to use to share. I might say something and you have another perspective. You have a question. You have something you want to say, hey, on that principle, here's a great research stat or a book or a podcast. Throw it in the chat. You're making a difference to other people. Now, I'm going to, put a +1 in the chat, and a +1 we put in if something resonates. If I'm saying something, you're like, heck yeah, it's a little like doing this with your hands. It's a heck yeah, or it's a that resonates. Maybe someone else does something. You can put the @ symbol and say @Tracy +1. Tracy has a comment. It's like thumbsing up something. So I would like everyone to put a +1 in the chat right now if you're missing being with people at events, in person, et cetera, right? That connection. If you're missing connection, I certainly am. We've got a lot of +1s coming in, so we know the keyboards work. That's great. And seems like there's a lot of resonance on this topic of missing connection, which will be a big theme in what we talk about today. We've got hundreds of people on today live. Thanks for making your morning, your afternoon, your evening, depending which time zone you're in, with us. So, look, the context is pretty crazy when we think about 2020, 2021, 2022. The hits keep coming for HR. So, look, almost 50 million Americans quit their jobs last year. Right? You think about the country's about 335 million people, I think, approximately, but not everyone's in the workforce. So a pretty large percentage of the workforce changed jobs, right? Reshuffling, right? The workplace is changing. How people feel about working. There's this, if you've heard about this term quiet quitting, we used to call that a disengaged employee, but that's a term that's coming up now. Employees are wanting hybrid and remote, but at the same time, when they get it, then they feel like they're not getting development from their managers. They feel like there's not belonging or inclusion, or they're less, connected with their colleagues. So what the employee experiences now exists through a screen, and we're going to talk about that. So we have to change. Organizations are not great at change, yet change is required. So a big challenge for all of us is to make sure organizations are sort of keeping up with the times, being competitive. It may be in the past, it took years to onboard a new technology system, or took forever to get management to approve budget. You're going to have to figure out ways to be faster if you want to be competitive, because while, tech sector is laying off people, most of the time the labor market is pretty hot still. Most sectors, most industries, most geographies, most levels, there's a lot of unfilled jobs. And so that's what we'll talk about as well. Fellow introverts. So if you're an introvert preference, remember, introversion is not about abilities, nor is extroversion. It's just a preference of sort of where you get your energy from. Put a +1 in there if you're introvert preference, because some introverts, sometimes it's like a little bit just saying hi, the introvert club. Let's put a +1 if you're introvert preference in there. Look, got a lot of introverts. And there's something nice about, coming to a WebEx like this versus, being in the ballroom at a Sheraton hotel. Nothing wrong with a Sheraton. I've stayed in plenty of them. But nice to have, look at all this, right? Lot of introvert preference. Good thing that we just now, and look, imagine if you thought you're the only introvert on this webinar, how different does it feel in 10 seconds to know that you're not alone? simple thing we just did there to have that sort of connection. And then we've got, as Kat said, the extroverted introvert, right? A blend of that, and Nadia relates to that. So Nadia and Kat are just connected right there. So, you think about what HR has been up to. Bailing water, right? Retaining people, hiring people, return to office, pandemic safety, vaccine stuff. I mean, DEI programs, there's a lot. And yet the big driver of what keeps people at an organization or has them leave is that employee experience. Often people join organizations and leave managers. Most people in HR have heard that saying before. And, the manager is a big part of the employee experience, but also how you use the tools you have and how you set up that experience for employees overall. Now, the big thing that we're really not talking about enough, in my opinion, in HR is people's expectations of work and where it ranks in their life. Work, I think, has taken it used to be so dominating. We would get dressed up a particular way. We would get in our cars, or we'd get on the train, or we'd get to work, go to an office park, a skyscraper, and we'd be at work, and then we'd go home or do other things. Well, now work often comes to us, maybe not every day of the week, or maybe some roles are in the office and some are hybrid, some are remote. I'm here in Manhattan, in New York City, and I'm in my apartment. This is where I work and where I live and where I hang out. And during the pandemic, it was my gym and my bar, my movie theater and my restaurant, and all of those things at once here in the Chelsea neighborhood. And so employees are thinking about work differently, and frankly, they're thinking about it less. Especially with a tight labor market, they know they have options. So it's really shifting. If employees, if you were a media company, if you were a consumer products company, if you're a consumer packaged goods company, and your demographic of your customers shifted, they wanted different things, you'd be urgently trying to figure out, how are they thinking? What do they want? How do we meet their needs? Because you wouldn't want to churn and lose that customer to new competitors. We have to think the same way in HR. Now, again, this is a very important time that, right now a lot of you all are in the budget planning process, or you will be this fall. This is a time, if you need resources, to be thinking about this, to use this webinar as a catalyst to make a bigger budget ask, to go research the firms or the vendors you could use, to think about the headcount you might want to hire. Now, I said 3 problems. Here's the first one. Number one, we're failing to accommodate various demographics in the workforce. I've got some stats for you. When people come to these webinars, everyone says, I want stats. I want numbers. Well, we've got them here for you. Padma has a comment in here as well we'll get to in a second. But, different strokes for different folks. We heard that saying before, perhaps. Well, think about a baby boomer who's maybe towards the end of their career and how they grew up, how they got educated, how they've navigated the workforce. And then think about someone who's Gen Z, who's 1 or 2 years out of university perhaps. Think about how different they communicate. Think about using the phone, right? This thing works. What is the phone, right? I know a lot of people that are early in career are not even accustomed to talking on the phone. It's like, why isn't it video? Why isn't it FaceTime? Why isn't it video chat on WhatsApp? Those are different preferences, and the comfort levels with technology. Different people are more comfortable using email, in-person meetings, versus think about Teams and Slack and things like that. And then, of course, management styles. How many of you, have folks in your management team that talk about butts in seats? Put a +1 if you butts in seats. People sitting in the chair, and that's how they feel comfort. We often talk about management by proximity, right? The idea being, if someone's close to me, I can influence or control them. Well, that's very different than if people are far away, which if you had a management paradigm that people have to be co-located or you can see them, and that's how you build relationships or have trust, it's got to be a big challenge if people are hybrid or remote. And of course, the preferences as well. Some people like a very dynamic, bustling environment. It's very inspiring and energizing. Some people need it to be more like a library, very sort of serene and quiet. and what people want. People want socialization and parties and events and speakers, or do people want to go to a place and be productive and get out, right? Or do that somewhere else? Different people want different things. So again, if we were designing a product, right? Imagine it was a pair of shoes that Nike was designing. Nike designs a whole lot of shoes. If you've ever gone to their website or their store, it's overwhelming, amazing shoes. But the kind of shoes that maybe someone who's retired wants to wear when they're walking at the mall in the morning is different than someone that is trying to train for a half marathon, which is different than someone that's trying to look attractive when they go out to the dance club. Different people want different things, and so they've segmented for the consumer different products. But think about, do we segment in our organizations? We usually have sort of a one-size-fits-none, right? Imagine that Nike shoe. We give everyone at your organization the exact same shoe and say, hope it works, right? And then that's what can often be difficult. Lots of good comments in the chat. Keep them coming. Critical to build relationships that match with employee expectations is what Tripp says. And, previous roles, Kat said, butts and seats was the thing. Thankfully, not anymore. Lydia says library plus one. One size fits, no one size fits all from Doreen, right? Pulling that insight from customer experience. And that's, again, we have to think more like marketers and product designers as HR people now, rather than just, thinking that people, are lucky to work here, right? In a lot of ways, we're lucky to have them. So we have to really make sure we're getting their needs met. By the way, when they do, they're outsized performance. They do better work for your customers and clients. They're more productive. They're more likely to be engaged. Now, here's the numbers. So the demographics right now is 65-year-old plus, and it used to be 65 years old. It's like, oh, that person's retired, right? Social Security eligible in the United States or other, retirement schemes around the world, pensions, et cetera. Now, we have a lot of people in the workforce that are 65 plus, including needing to be retained for knowledge transfer. There's certain industries that are missing certain folks. I remember I read an article about financial advisors and financial planners, huge gap in the market, so people are delaying retirement. That number is going to double or go up by 50% in the next 10 years. Now, 35% of the workforce right now are millennials, but they're going to represent 75% of the workforce by 2025. So millennials, which, by the way, think of a millennial. For a long time we talk about millennials. We think of sort of a young person. Millennials are now 42 years old, some of them, 41, 42 years old, and, have kids that are in, middle school or high school sometimes. They own a house in the suburbs. It's not the young person, going to music festivals and on their phone all the time. We have, millennials can mean a lot of different things. It's a pretty wide age span. And then, of course, more than half of 18 to 24-year-olds are searching for a new job, along with 31% of 25 to 34-year-olds. Critical segment of the employment market, and they're seeing they can switch. Pretty easy to switch when you're earlier in career. There's more roles, recruiting cycles are faster, et cetera, but super important because they know that they've got options. So we have to make sure that they see that our organizations and our employment practices and our employee experience are their best option. And, Marcus asked, what's the percent Gen Xers and baby boomers in the workforce now and the projections in 2025? If anyone happens to know, I don't know Marcus offhand, but if anyone happens to know or has any stats, let's drop them in the chat. Padma says hybrid is sustainable and welcome by non-mainstream groups, but the onboarding of hybrid concept is embedded in organizational culture. And if you have onboarded someone or been onboarded yourself remotely in the last 2.5 years, put a +1 in, and I'd love to know your experience. Was it better? Was it worse? Was it challenging? Was it awkward? Onboarding is shown to be one of the most powerful HR interventions, and we often bungle it. So would love any commentary about what onboarding in a virtual context is like. Now, problem number 2, we have different demographics, have different expectations. Problem number 2, unmanaged and dispersed workforce, right? So lack of in-person interactions can be challenging, We don't necessarily build the trust, the rapport. If you've got that bank stored up with someone, right? There's deposits in the account before there's a withdrawal. When they send you an email that's a little off or aggressive, or they make a mistake, or they drop the ball, or they say something that might offend you accidentally, and they didn't mean it, makes a big difference. If you don't have that, That's often where you have a really, really challenging environment. Matt says it was very awkward on the onboarding, by the way. Unique for Cat, and remote work environments can be distracting. We haven't really, most organizations don't say to employees, hey, if you're going to work remote or hybrid, here's the expectation for your surroundings. It's basically, do you have a laptop and do you have VPN or an RSA token to log in? And Godspeed, right? We haven't talked about distractions. We haven't talked about it being quiet or being able to focus or having good ergonomics so they don't get injured or lack productivity. At Pilot, we make sure everyone has 2 monitors, huge productivity lift. We often have it in the office, but at home, people working on their laptop, very inefficient if they can't see all the information they need and have Asana, HubSpot, Slack, G Suite, all the tools that we use, they can see all on a screen. Lack of trust. Some employees will say that using Teams and Slack and Yammer, those type of tools, they feel like they're always on. They're sort of like on demand. Well, part of that is organizations and trust, where people don't respond or that little green light isn't on. There's an assumed thought that they're not working, they're not productive, or they're not committed, they're not engaged, which may not have anything to do with that. They could be picking up their kid from school and they're going to log on later. They could be taking a walk so they can be stimulated for their next meeting and refreshed. And of course, company culture is struggling. What is culture? A lot of culture we based around the office. What the snacks are in the pantry. What do we do on Fridays? The lunch and learns. It's a diversity week. It's a wellness week. It's a careers week. So that the dispersed workforce, we've let people log in to do their jobs, but we haven't really created the experiences and the connection in a dispersed workforce that we know is important. 74% of Gen Z respondents prefer interacting with colleagues face-to-face, right? It might surprise you. You think Gen Z, everyone's on Snapchat and TikTok and everything else? No. Now, boomers are number 2 and Gen Xers, so that millennials may be the least likely, sort of interesting, right? Might challenge some of your assumptions. 9% of employees relocated to another location, making a return to the office full-time impossible. So we also have people that moved because they could during the pandemic and now can't get back. And are we going to lose that talent? Are we going to have them churn? That's something we need to think about. A lot of organizations I know were never open to remote roles, but for the right role, it can be. Now, if you have someone that needs to lead office culture and be in person or manage, imagine a facilities management head that wasn't in the facility. That'd be a problematic thing. But there are other roles. JetBlue pioneered this in the early aughts. They had part-time stay-at-home parents in the Salt Lake area doing their ticketing and call center from home, right? They found that people got better customer service when people are comfortable at home than when they're in a cubicle in a call center. So some of these things are possible. So, and Colette says, my whole team have 3 screens. 3, this is a lot. That's like a mission control, Colette. And then Nadia mentions, the green light, times and frustrating to pop in and out. Problem number 3, inconsistent learning and development. So we talk about enablement, the expectations of an employee. When employees often think, and managers alike, about where they want to work, if you just gave them a magic wand, say, where do you want to work? And they wave their little wand, they're going to work where it's most convenient, typically, right? They're going to optimize probably on commutes and cost with, gas prices and inflation and, public health concerns, child care, dependent care. But we don't always say, well, you have to maybe work differently if you work in different places. When you're in an office, people will walk by you and it'll remind you need to follow up with them. You'll have serendipitous things. If you're struggling, someone can say, hey, can I help you? You get motivated. There's good structure. We have to develop different skills. Frankly, it is harder to be successful as an employee when you're remote or hybrid than in person. Now, Pilot's a remote-first company. I'm pro-remote, but it requires a higher level of talent to work at Pilot than if we were all in person, because it requires people to reach out, to initiate, to write a lot more, to actively communicate. So learning in the past, L&D, training, talent development, we've done in person. Let's all go to the conference room. Let's all go to the Sheraton ballroom. The technology we use is pretty dated. And frankly, if employees look at it and they quickly go, People, judge a book by its cover. Sometimes the cover is your learning management system or your intranet, and if it looks ugly, they assume it's not relevant. Even if the content, you develop brand new training course, brand new content. If it's in an ugly system, a lot of employees will assume that it's dated and not relevant. Also, the content isn't there. Most employees don't realize when you're in a hybrid or remote context, they need to reach out a lot more. That truly out of sight can be out of mind. They need to initiate one-on-ones. They need to continue to network virtually. Most employees, their networking dies when they work at home. They don't think, I have to initiate. I have to reach out. I have to keep these relationships warm. All of us know in business and workplaces, relationships are everything. But we often had a structure which was running into people in the lobby, in the parking lot, in the cafeteria, in the elevator, in the meeting, at the event that made a lot of those things happen. We have to find a different way to do that now. Matt is waiting for the training in the VR Sheraton ballroom. That'll be the day, right? We'll have the Oculus headset on, and we'll be like, we're in the Sheraton, we're in Boston, we're downtown, wherever we might be. And then the last thing is lack of advocates. So, we need to have people advocate for themselves. You may have team members where the workload is not evenly distributed and you didn't know, right? Because someone got a project that we thought was simple and turned out to be really complex. And then we gave them more and more projects when someone else has got really simple projects, and it's just hard to see. If people had papers stacked up on their desk and we saw everyone in the same room, we could know that. So we need to have people find their voice. So if these L&D challenges resonate, if you've got one or two of these, just put a +1 in the chat. You've in the past done in person, maybe your technology's not that great, the content doesn't speak to the moment. Think about writing, and asynchronous work. We need people to have fewer meetings. Everyone has got Zoom fatigue. Well, it's often because they're not good writers. They don't put things down on paper or digital paper. Lack of advocates, self-advocates at work. All right. So I may have bummed you out enough with problems. Let's get to solutions. But I'll show you one more stat real quick. So 55% of respondents said that they need additional training to perform better in their roles. Over half of, and imagine that's 55% that are self-aware enough and humble enough to say it. I would assert as a coach, probably 100% of people need it. But this is 55% of people who are humble and self-aware enough to realize it. We've got to provide more. And 59% of L&D professionals identify upskilling or reskilling as a top priority this year. We have to have people be relevant for the future. Imagine a sales team that always went out to pitch with a hard-sided briefcase, and they drove their, whatever their Cadillac or whatever their car is, and they go to an office and they pitch. Now they've got to do it on Zoom and Teams and WebEx. Those are different skills. So you imagine the reskilling, even for the same task, you have to do it differently in a different context. Doreen says she sees it all the time as an occupational health doctor. Carol says that updating HR tech really quickly in the past 3 years has made a difference. Carol, I would love to know how you did that. Most HR people struggle to get the technology updated. I'd love if you could drop in any tips or advice you have on how to do that. Now, what it could be, right? Those are the challenges. What it could be, employees feeling heard, right? Wow, I'm not a one-size-fits-none jammed into the generic shoe. I'm not someone who's, this is designed for these kind of people, and I'm not it, right? Imagine a workplace that's optimized to baby boomers, and you're part of a Gen Z or a younger millennial group, and you say, this isn't it for me. You might quit after a few weeks and go somewhere else. Now, productivity is also increased, right? That, the location they choose, they align their work styles to be most productive. And then we have L&D programs that actually work for people, that are inclusive and helps them prepare for the future to be competitive. So number one solution, right? Rethink the traditional employee experience. Traditional employee experience means the word traditional for a reason. Traditional sounds sort of old or classic, maybe, but we need to think about a new employee experience. So your workforce is diverse, hopefully. They're going to have ideas. You don't have to always have the solution. You can say, hey, how can we have fun as a team? We used to always go out to happy hour on Fridays in the office. What could we do to have fun? They're going to have friends and spouses and colleagues that have ideas. They're going to see stuff on Instagram and on LinkedIn. They're going to see things in different places. Let them help suggest how to do things differently. And by the way, put them in charge of it so they have visibility and ownership, right? Technology. We use Slack at Pilot. Every Monday it says, what did you do this weekend? We have a Slack bot. No one has to remember. It automatically asks us, and then we post pictures of dogs and kids and bicycles and sushi and gardens and everything that people do. Multiple paths for career development, right, for different employee demographics. So maybe some employees don't want to be relocated to the headquarters. Employees' willingness to geographically move is at an all-time low. So we have to give them different paths to move forward. And we have to look to, accommodate different folks. Certain people, it's a real chore to get into a physical office. They may have a disability. They may have a dependent that they take care of, their commute based upon where they live, and their income, et cetera. So we have to think about that and create different paths because we can get different talent. JetBlue is a great example. JetBlue is headquartered here in New York City, in Queens, but they ended up hiring reservations agents in Salt Lake, and that was in the early aughts, right, before all this technology. Great example of being clever about certain roles where obviously you can't have virtual pilots and flight attendants. They've got to be over at JFK with the flights, but certain roles you can do that. And again, trying to provide more equity, right, and equalizing the environment. I remember there was a story at Coca-Cola with, I believe it was SARS years ago, canceled their in-person global leadership conference that was for their top couple hundred folks, and my former boss had worked there. And they did it virtually instead. And what they did is they invited the whole company. Instead of a few hundred people, they invited, 50,000 or whatever, however many employees they have. It was a huge hit because all these people, instead of waiting for this black box conference to then have some deck get cascaded, they saw it live. And they never had higher engagement around the strategy is when everyone could join because they did it virtually. That's a way of equalizing, right? The information transfer, the transparency, all of those things. Solution number 2, shift technologies and mindset, right? Video makes a difference. Now, not every meeting needs to be a video meeting, to be clear. Sometimes a phone call can be great. In particular, it's better than a meeting, not a meeting, right? But you can share, we use, videos back and forth. We use a tool called Drift, there's StreamYard, Loom, other great tools out there. If you've got great tools that you use for video, by the way, drop them in the chat so everyone knows what's out there. And maybe my pilot team can drop the names that I just shared in there. And pilot team, where are you? I need you in the chat. And then, in particular, the check-ins, right? Consistent check-ins. It's very easy to have a week go by and people are living out of their inbox or they're just out of their calendar and they go to a particular meeting. A check-in can be not just a status meeting. It's how are you? You might learn that they had a fire at their house. Oh my gosh. They might need some time off, some flexibility. You might talk to them. You kind of can sense they're burnout or they're exhausted. The thing about helpless people when we're in a helpless spot, myself included, is we need the most help when we're helpless. So managers and colleagues can say, you should really schedule a vacation. You should log off. You should ask for help. You should reset the deadline on that, right? Those check-ins can really make a difference. And again, virtual team building activities. We've hired pilot magicians we've brought in. We've brought in, folks to do all sorts of different things with us as a company that we've had character artists. We've played virtual, games, showcase showdown type family feud things. Sometimes it's just, we bring playlists and we all play different music and we have a drink and have a lot of fun. We did a virtual painting class. There are creative ways to create that camaraderie. We can, a lot of those we invite families, so you see kids and spouses. And it really expands the tent across states and countries and all sorts of different borders. But, if you've got a culture that is cameras off, consider what that's about. What are people doing? Why is that? One of the things I worked on with my team recently is we started having a culture where everyone was on mute. And I said, hey, that's actually not aligned with our value of vibrant as a company. So, being on mute is, a way to silence yourself, and you don't get the laugh, you don't get the congrats, the snaps, the claps. So we now have a practice of mute by default is off, and you only put it on if you absolutely need it because something loud is going on. And if that's the case, that should be pretty rare too, because then you don't have good work conditions. So these are the kinds of, mindsets and how we use technology. So, the third part is, learning and development, right? So, we got to think differently about developing people. It's why they're quitting, the great resignation. They're not getting the development that they need, right? So we've got to digitize. We've got to make it accessible in different places. Pilot does this as an example where you can reach people whether they're at home, right? We can reach people whether they're, at the office or in between. They can do it asynchronously. We've got to think about if you've got things, and e-learning alone is probably not going to be it. You got to figure out how to facilitate, to coach, to give feedback, etc. Failing fast. Now, the word fail, you may have we hear the word fail and we immediately sort of tense up. But frankly, failing is a part of learning, right? Learning and development. We don't typically think learning and failure as sort of ingredients we put together in the same dish, but it's a required part of experimentation. So create the psychological safety with your HR and L&D teams to try something new. Hey, we usually do this program for 3 days and it's super intensive. We're going to try to break it up into 6 half days over 6 weeks. Experiment. See if you lose a bunch of people, if it works really well. That's the experimentation. And of course, implementing, training about what it takes to succeed, becoming better writers, using these tools. People may not be comfortable on video. You have to figure out how they can have active body language. See how I'm using my hands. I'm looking into the camera. I've got a light over me. Little things. You probably maybe noticed, anyone put a +1 if you notice the flowers. Anyone like flowers? Got these lilies here. So put a +1 if you notice. These are real flowers. These are not fake. These are real flowers. Got them on sale at Whole Foods with my little Prime discount. They're beautiful. They smell great. But that's a way to create a softer touch, even virtually. But people don't know to do that. They don't know to be well lit, right? We got favorite flowers coming in. All right. I'm glad that you like them. And of course, encourage employees to speak up, right? So we don't know if people are struggling or frustrated. We don't know if people are in need of help, if they're considering leaving. So the last thing we want is a high performer that becomes regrettable attrition because they left for a thing that we probably could do something about. Think about all the folks that you've had quit during the Great Resignation because they wanted some flexibility in their schedule, and yet they never asked about it or tried to create that for themselves. That's the kind of thing that drives us crazy. So we have to create a culture and empower employees to figure out how to advocate, to ask. And if employees feel like they're not getting feedback, saying that in an engagement survey doesn't mean they're going to get feedback. What they probably need to do is realize they should ask for it and solicit it. It's the thing that we teach people to do with Pilot, right? To solicit the feedback. If employees are feeling unclear about a work assignment, a deadline, an expectation, a scope, right? That's the kind of thing that we want them to say, hey, I'm confused, or I need help, or I can't get this done by the deadline, so then we can allocate the workloads and provide that sort of support. But these are skills that people typically have not had to advocate for themselves. So now what I want is in the chat from you all. What we're going to do is we're going to community source. So every idea, suggestion that comes in right now, we're going to put together in a really cool PDF and we're going to email it out to everybody that's on this webinar. So this is not just Pilot and Ben's thoughts, this is everyone's thoughts. What are you doing, right, to address the need to digitize your work experience, to turn the employee experience virtual? And how are you accommodating for people that are in all sorts of different places? So it may be that you want to put in the chat a keynote speaker you hired, someone you follow online, a podcast you listen to, a book you're reading. But it may also be to say, hey, every Wednesday we have a contest and we, have people submit the best recipe and we all vote on them. And people are crazy about it and the winner gets $50. So let's drop some of those in the chat right now. So Melody says we use Teams and have a library on Teams. OneNote, with a notebook and links to comments, discussion, video available to everyone. Right? Great use of a software that you already have. It's just about using it smartly, putting a bunch of great things together. Nick says, read Gen Z at Work, right, by David and Jonah Stillman. Invited them to speak. So you want to learn something? Like, read that book. Nick says it's great. Had him good enough to have him come in and speak. Amy, stay interviews, right? If you don't know what a stay interview is, think of an exit interview before someone quits. And instead of asking them why they quit, it's why they stay. What matters to them? We should do more for them, right? Hosting regular engagement events in person and virtual to meet employees where they are, right? That's great. That's what Tara's doing. Virtual scavenger hunts. Tish, I would love, if there's any detail, Tish, about how you do that. Do you say, go find a paperclip in your house or something like that? How does a virtual scavenger hunt work? It sounds really fun. Tracy, stay interviews, again, targeted based on department or turnovers. Use your people analytics. Working through the True North book to get people re-engaged from Trip. Great book. Qualtrics podcast from Matt. Definitely something to check out. Julie, monthly team building activity hosted by different members of the team. So that's great, kind of sharing the wealth, right, Julie? So then different people get to learn to lead, facilitate, et cetera, right? That's really, really, really powerful. And you also get the creativity. Someone's going to bring in something totally different. Ania created engagement communities that plan everything from company events to events for foster kids. Wow, incredible. So clearly leveraging your talent in these committees and sort of, distributing the power. Asking employees, Lisa says, to share their rose and thorn at our weekly meeting. What a great activity, right? Choose different teammates to run our weekly meetings. That rotation, you're right? That's growth. That's L&D in action, Different Lisa Post says, create experience 1 day a month for each location. Includes various created events and activities to occur throughout the day. Encourage folks to come to the office and celebrate. So there's a reason for them to come. They anticipate. You want to be here on this day. This thing is going to happen. Julie says, workplace ERGs that operate 100% remotely. So a lot of innovation there, right? Julie, any more detail on that would be great. Monica, consistently reviewing employee experience through onboarding, exit interview, pulse surveys, right? Moving the needle based on actions. Nick says mindful meditation at the top of a big, long meeting. Wow, what a great, imagine people coming in hot. It used to be you'd leave a meeting and you get a cup of coffee or go to the restroom, walk down the hallway, take the elevator, get a transition. Now we close the red button and we click the next thing. Start with the meditation. Powerful idea. Ania says weekly check-ins with staff. Suggestion boxes are available through Google Forms and physically in offices. Move the company intranet to SharePoint, right? So you could build community sites. Sort of, again, a big theme here is delegating the power, sharing the load, the work, giving the tools, right? Messi says don't assume that all new hires, especially younger gen, will know how to set up and use tech properly. That's a great assumption, to check your bias on that assumption that just because they're young doesn't mean they're tech fluent and that we need to support them. And they may be fine with playing a video game or social media, but they may not know how to use enterprise technology. Teams and Zoom meetings various days have each member give a statement of encouragement. Happy hours, food and drinks, robust tools. Monthly yoga during lunchtime, right? So I'm looking at our time here. I'm going to go on to a couple more, but meet virtually, transition from paper-based to computerized. Let people tell them holding space events with societal moments when they happen for the team to connect. So imagine if there's a tragedy, the wars, et cetera, right? To share, to problem solve. We did that recently with, some Supreme Court rulings, et cetera, topical and fun Grubhub lunches. So that's fun. So you maybe theme it. Everyone orders maybe sushi or Mexican or something like that, Italian. Monthly all hands meeting, we do shout outs, right? Everyone's hungry for recognition. You don't have to give them a certificate, just saying, hey, Jane, you did a great job. Funnest trick played on us, best pumpkin sculpture, name the queens, 2 dogs. Awesome. Team members for their great efforts. So we're going to compile all of these internal social media awards and recognition platforms. Shout outs, virtual coffee breaks and break rooms, mental health programs that are easier to access, super important, right? We have mental health crisis globally. Passive-aggressive coloring sessions. It's an event where employees can take time out of their workday and simply color. Oh, can I join this, Keisha? No talking is necessary. We have a therapist present who may ask a thought-provoking question, right? It's simply time for employees to disconnect. I want to join that. That sounds fun. Virtual meetings quarterly, or brainstorming, Jackbox games, etc. So, all right. So new hires, voluntary teams. So this is amazing. Keep the ideas coming. Even Thursday, different member buys breakfast for the team, right? The scavenger hunt right here. Look at Tish coming in hot. So the link is right there for the scavenger hunt. You take that one with you. So, and put a +1 in the chat if it's energizing to see ideas from other HR practitioners. Like, this is a unique thing for a webinar, and we should do more of this, right? Because we've got some prompts, some best practices, but, a lot really coming here. I'm learning a lot from you all. So as we think about what you do with this, right, you want to talk to your employees from the different demographics. Don't assume the younger employee knows technology, enterprise technology. Talk to them, understand their needs and their challenges. Maybe like an anthropologist, right? Look for the shifts that have happened, right? What are we not going to go back to? Some people say, we're going to go back to this. We're going to go back to that. I wish it was this. We're holding on to the past. What's the future look like, right? And look at your technology. A lot of you mentioned people analytics and data. Look at your intranet. Do people even go? Look at your email open rates. Look at your responses. Look at the number of questions you get in a town hall, right? Gen Z, they're learners, right? Think about people, especially just out of maybe secondary or college, university, etc. They want to learn. If you just put them to work and they feel like they're not learning, they're only learning by brute force, they're going to leave, right? Surprisingly, people 50 plus have the highest levels of engagement. Leverage that. Don't just go, okay, we don't have to worry about them. People that are 50 plus, they know a lot. They've been in the workplace a long time. They're freaking smart. They're experienced. They want to make an impact often. Give them an opportunity. Have them share their knowledge. Create internal blogs, right? All of those sorts of things. Don't just leave them out there until they retire or ignore them. They may not be wanting another promotion, but they certainly like to make a bigger impact. And personalizing your experience, right? Start with the end in mind. The ultimate goal is to create a digital experience that feels like a great in-person experience, right? So making a plan, product roadmap, if you build a technology product like Loom Apps or Pilot, you can't do all of it at once. So you build this feature, and then the next one will be this one, and the next one will be this one. So it's sort of like building a Taj Mahal, one room at a time. You have a vision for the palace. You start with one room. So that's what I want you all to think about is what do you start with? Because you'll get a laundry list of ideas, but you can't do them all. Budget, management capacity, change capacity, right? And also think about hybrid and remote. How do we handle that? Some people in office, some not. When do we agree, in this fluid working? And how do we set the experience that sometimes it may be inconvenient to commute into the office and you wouldn't want to on a personal level, but you do it for your team member. They have a big presentation. They're leading a big workshop. We have a big client pitch. And so making sure that we're all comfortable with that as well. 66, 2/3 of L&D pros agree that learning and development is focused on rebuilding or reshaping an organization, right? So that's, L&D is not just to keep people technically trained or compliant or having, regulatory, foreign corrupt practices, sexual harassment, all that stuff. You got to do all that. That's fine. It's important stuff. But it actually can shape an organization, the culture, the strategy. Heads of DEI are increasingly relying on L&D. Don't mean to use alphabet soup, but diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders are relying on developmental programs to drive diversity initiatives because they know they need to cultivate, right? Now, only 70% of remote workers get regular training from their company. So, imagine, almost a third of folks get no training. They're remote and that's a gig. It's not a job, that's a gig. You know what happens when people are sick of a gig? They get rid of the gig. You don't want people to quit really easily, Now, look, action steps on the hybrid and remote, training, helping managers succeed in this environment. Managers, we've noticed, have, been really resistant to providing feedback unless they're in person. We've got to have them provide feedback when they're virtual, have career chats, give performance reviews. We have to have them realize they need to trust people and how to develop trust by not just statusing someone on Teams or Slack all the time or judging them based on that green light that creates a toxic work environment, right? And thinking like a product manager, like what are the pain points versus the gimmicks? We can do something that sort of like checks the box, or I did a team building thing, but really, right, what is that? So, training on remote and hybrid work, 46% of professionals report spending 1 to 4 hours per month on their own time learning about remote work and refreshing their remote skills. They're like doing this on their own time because they need it so badly. They're being lifelong students and they're finding it themselves. Imagine if you did it together. Imagine at your next staff meeting, you spent 10 minutes watching a brief video about effective networking virtually, or how to create belonging, or looking for signs of people that maybe are having a mental health challenge and how to be an ally and an advocate to support them. Embedding the L&D in the flow of work, doing it together, virtual book club, we've done that at Pilot where we read a chapter a week and we talk about it. Some positive peer pressure. We read the book Crucial Conversations, a wonderful book. Some things like that. And then 70% of remote workers get regular training from their company. So Pilot briefly, and I'm going to get to questions at the end. So if you got questions, drop them in the chat right now. We got a lot of people. I see Preston, Missy, and others are in the chat. Donna's in there. Just so you know how Pilot works, and this is something where we can help you create a virtual L&D experience. We bring reflection. We ask employees hard questions. We get them to think, right, to pull up a bit. We bring managers in and talk to employees about their future, not their past. Performance reviews are about the past. We talk about the future, give them feedback. We bring employees together and have them expand their networks inside of an organization. Gallup's research on Vital Friends says the ultimate employee retention strategy is people having friends at work. How do you create that? We bring group coaching in, right? We challenge people. We get them excited. It's almost like a group fitness class, like Orange Theory, Soul Cycle, Barry's Boot Camp type thing, Peloton class, Rumble, any of the things you might like to do. We bring people together to focus on their careers and their growth. Executive firesides, right? We bring them in to talk about the unwritten rules of work, what their life experience is, how that affected who they are, the vulnerability. And of course, when you roll things out, you want to measure it and you want to make sure that people use it and that it works. So it's a 6-month program, 25 employees go through it together, 10 minutes a week or an hour-long coaching. It's very snackable in the flow of work. Managers give growth chats and feedback. We bring the executives in to model lifelong learning, right? Model the behavior that they're still learning. They may be a senior vice president, a CFO, but she is still learning. She is still getting better. So that's what we try to do, and it's all in a very affordable, effective, virtual turnkey approach. And again, a lot of great results. The whole thing, ultimately, though, with remote and digital employees, is they have to take more ownership for their work, more ownership for their relationships, more ownership for how they feel the resources that they need. So I see Corianne's in there, Leighton's in there, awesome, Taylor. So that's a big part of that ownership. So what we're going to do is, if you've got, questions, drop them in the chat right now. We want to see those questions. And we're going to send you, after this, via email, a beautiful, shareable, not too dense, just right, summary of the key points in this WebEx. Because, we'll have the recording too, but most of your colleagues probably aren't going to watch an hour, even if you tell them I was really good and the flowers were beautiful. But we'll give something really concise that you can share in a virtual environment with your fellow colleagues. Now, here's the homework. I'm going to give you some homework. I'm a coach, remember? So insights are great. It's great that we have an insight that you could do a virtual scavenger hunt or the meditation before. Wonderful ideas. The coloring, the drawing, amazing. But share the insights. That's the first thing. Don't hide them in your big brain. I shouldn't say little brain, big brain. Don't hide them there. Share them. Download the guides that we're going to send out. We'd love to connect on LinkedIn. So put Tara's got a hello to Lynn Ann in there. In the chat right now, if you've got LinkedIn and you'd like to connect with more HR professionals, connect with me. Just drop mine in there right there. Let's let's grow our network. Drop your LinkedIn in there if you'd like to connect with others. I'd like to connect with every single one of you that was on today. We share a lot. I write a column every month called the Coach's Corner for HR Executive Magazine. This one was all about just saying no to budget cuts and how to protect your budgets. We write about things like that. And of course, you got to take action. You got to take action, right? Nick from Target, awesome. Padma, got so many great people. You all, I mean, talk about a fantastic group. Now, Dolly Parton, hopefully you're a fan, and if not, what's wrong with you? We can't direct the wind, right? But we can adjust our sails. Nick's got an amen. Yes, we got some Dolly fans. If you're a Dolly fan, let's get the Dolly fan club in here. Very generous, amazing leader in her own right, and amazing creative and artist. But again, the wins are going to be that people want digital, distributed workforce, tight labor market. These are things that are much bigger than anything that's at your organization. But adjusting the sails, if you've ever been on a sailboat or been a sailor, right, you have to work with the wind. The wind actually becomes your propulsion system. But if the winds change, you still need to have propulsion, right? So you have to change the sails. Well, the winds have changed in the last 2 or 3 years in HR. That's just what's happened. We can resist it. We can have a fit about it, but the winds have changed. So a couple of my colleagues have been on today. We've got Beth on, Lynn Ann, Leighton. You may hear from some of these folks. They're wonderful people that care about everyone feeling powerful at work, which is our mission. We're a certified LGBT-owned small business as well around supplier diversity. It's a very important thing. I've seen, again, a bunch of people that we know that have joined today. So we really appreciate your time. I'm here for other questions. Keep sharing your LinkedIn. I will mention that, Tish says, to DE8, big fan of partnering with internal comms at the outset, right? Just in general, any corporate function, right? Like procurement or supply chain. If you're going to buy something, let them know before you need the contract reviewed in 2 days, right? That's annoying. Just like a manager offers someone a job and they didn't work with HR. Like, we always want to bring our colleagues in earlier. It's a thoughtful, respectful thing, right? So, so I think that's, a big part of it, right? So would love on the way out, a word, a thought, an insight. What was your highlight of today? The community ideas, a specific one, Dolly Parton reference on an HR webinar, right? The flowers, I guess they're this way. Getting to talk with others, LinkedIn, like how are you feeling? What do you take away? Lynn Ann likes the scavenger hunt. Corey Ann likes the community ideas. Sarah likes the helpful information. Ania says insanely helpful and engaging. Wow, insanely. Carol, great. Matt says a meditation before a big meeting. I mean, I agree, Matt. I'm a daily meditator. Huge. Nikhil, right? Very helpful meeting. Lots of great ideas, right? So leading with ideas, it sounds like, Nikhil, is very energizing for you. The caricatures, the community ideas from Tara, right? Love the energy. More LinkedIn's coming in. Let's keep connecting with folks. And everyone's looking forward to getting this list. We're going to send it out to you. I've got Preston and Liz on our team. We're going to help with that. You'll be hearing from Leighton, right? We'll get all those out. We've got great people here. Taking time away from my regular day was a win for Carol, right? Leighton loves the fun ideas for HR. Taylor says that she loves the tips for working with different demographics. Tools for engagement, right? Legit can't wait to forward these ideas on, right? You'll get it soon, says Preston. So the pilot crew, strong here. So thanks, everyone. Again, let's connect. We're here to help. Pilot can help. You're probably building your budgets. We got advice. We can send you to other vendors, people, books. We actually have an entire book list we will send you. Send any one of these people an email. Ben, Beth, Lynn, Leighton. We will send you a whole list of books on L&D, careers, culture, DEI, your personal brand. We've got a lot of resources. And these are just all books on Amazon. If you're a Kindle person, an Audible person, they got it all there. So we're really excited. Missy, thank you for the applause, right? Edith in South Africa, working the late shift. I appreciate the hustle, the flowers. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks to Catherine and Brooke at WebEx and HRE, and thanks to LoomApps for again, sponsoring a really great webinar, and we appreciate you making time for this. Laverne says the best seminar I've been to since COVID. From Jamaica, all right. Thank you for the compliment. You make me feel really, really special when you say something like that, and I'm sure that you mean it. So I'm glad that the content we've delivered, my team worked hard on this. This is a team effort. Everything we do at Pilot is about the team, and so we appreciate all that. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your week, a great rest of August. Use the fall to plan for next year. Use the fall to get some quick wins, right? Really, really critical. Appreciate your time. We've got a bunch of webinars. You're going to see a bunch more from us. Sign up for them. They're going to be great. We've got a lot of new content. Every time it's a new topic. The book list we'll give you out, everything. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.